Velithka had spent 400 years studying the dead. Not bodies, but entire civilizations. Species that had once built empires across star systems, created art that made other beings weep with joy, developed technology that bent the laws of physics. Now they were gone. All that remained were ruins, records, and questions that would never be answered. She was a Soren, a species known for patience and careful scholarship. Her people lived for 6 centuries on average, and most Soren spent those centuries doing very little of importance. Velithka was different. She had joined the Galactic Scholarly Compact at age 40 and had never stopped working since. The Compact was a coalition of 340 spacefaring species. Their purpose was simple: find the dead civilizations scattered across the galaxy and learn what happened to them. Some had destroyed themselves in wars. Others had fallen to plagues or cosmic disasters. A few had simply vanished with no explanation at all. Velithka had personally cataloged 47 dead civilizations. She knew more about extinction than any living being in the galaxy. Today, she sat in her office on the archive world of Kenneth Station, surrounded by floating displays filled with ancient text. The latest project was the Veth Dominion, a species that had controlled 200 star systems before their collapse 800,000 years ago. The Veth had kept excellent records. Their final century was documented in painful detail. She scrolled through the files, looking for any mention of external threats. The Veth had died from a cascade of civil wars, but something had triggered the first conflict. She needed to find that trigger. Her search algorithm flagged an anomaly. A single entry in the Veth diplomatic archives mentioned a world called Earth. The entry was dated 3 years before the first civil war. Velithka frowned. Earth was a minor planet in a quiet corner of the galaxy. Humans had achieved spaceflight only 3 centuries ago. They were known for their agricultural exports and their skill in diplomacy. They had no military to speak of, no territorial ambitions, no galactic influence. Why would the Veth have mentioned Earth 800,000 years before humans even existed? She opened the entry. It contained only 2 lines. The first line read, "Initial survey of Sol 3 complete. Findings attached." The second line read, "By unanimous vote of the High Council, all findings are sealed. This matter is not to be discussed or investigated further." There was no attachment. No findings. Just those 2 lines and then nothing. The next entry in the archive discussed trade negotiations with a neighboring empire. Earth was never mentioned again. Velithka felt a strange chill run through her body. In 4 centuries of research, she had never seen anything like this. The Veth were meticulous record keepers. They documented everything. To leave a gap like this was completely out of character. She marked the entry for further investigation and continued her work. 3 days later, her research assistant came to her office. Turim was a young polyth, a species with excellent pattern recognition. He had been working with Velithka for only 2 decades, but she had come to rely on his insights. "I found something strange," Turim said. He transferred a file to her display. "You asked me to check if other dead civilizations mentioned Earth. I searched our entire archive." Velithka looked at the file. It was a list. A very long list. 143 matches, Turim continued. Out of the last 200 civilizations we have cataloged, 143 of them mention Earth in their records. And every single one of them does the same thing. The same thing? They mention it once. They seal the findings. They never discuss it again. The pattern is identical every time. Velithka stared at the list. The civilization spanned millions of years. Some had died before Earth's sun had finished forming. How could they possibly have known about a planet that did not yet exist? "Show me the oldest reference," she said. Toram pulled up a record from the Silence Makers, a civilization that had collapsed nearly 5 million years ago. Their entry was almost identical to the Veth record. Initial survey. Findings sealed. Matter closed. But there was one additional element. A symbol that appeared in the margin of the document. Velith Ka recognized it from her training. It was a warning glyph, used by dozens of ancient species. The meaning was universal. Do not pursue. She sat back in her chair, her mind racing. 143 dead civilizations. All of them had found something on Earth. All of them had chosen to bury what they found. All of them had left the same warning. And all of them were dead. We need to bring this to the council, Toram said. The governing council of the Scholarly Compact met in a vast chamber at the heart of Kenneth Station. 17 representatives from the most influential species listened as Velithka presented her findings. She showed them the pattern, the sealed records, the warning glyphs. She asked for authorization to investigate further. The response was not what she expected. "This is speculation," said Counselor Vetheran, a Torveth diplomat known for his dismissive attitude. "You have found gaps in ancient records. Gaps prove nothing. Perhaps these civilizations lost data. Perhaps the records were corrupted. You are seeing patterns where none exist. The pattern is consistent across 143 separate species," Velithka replied, "spanning 5 million years. The probability of coincidence is effectively zero." "And what do you suggest?" Vetheran asked. "That a minor agricultural world somehow threatens galactic civilization? The humans have no military. They have no advanced weapons. They trade in grain and diplomatic services. They are completely harmless. I am not suggesting humans are a threat. I am suggesting something on Earth might be." Vetheran made a dismissive gesture. "We have surveyed Earth. Our probes have mapped every continent. There is nothing unusual there. Your theory is interesting academically, but it has no practical relevance." Request denied. The other counselors nodded in agreement. Velithka recognized the look in their eyes. They were not skeptical. They were afraid. They did not want to know what she had found. She left the chamber without arguing further. She had expected this response. She had simply needed it on record. That night, she accessed the Compact's deep archives. These were records that predated the current coalition, gathered from sources that were ancient when the first council species achieved spaceflight. Most scholars never looked at these files. The data was fragmentary, the languages often untranslatable. Velithka had spent 50 years learning to read these ancient texts. She searched for any reference to Earth, to Sol, to the third planet in that unremarkable star system. She found 17 references. All of them followed the same pattern: survey, seal, warning. But one record was different. It came from a species so old that their name had been lost. The record was not a survey report. It was something else entirely. A confession. The text was difficult to translate. Many of the concepts had no equivalent in modern languages. But Velithka worked through it word by word, and slowly the meaning became clear. The ancient species had not surveyed Earth. They had created it. No, that was not quite right. They had chosen Earth. They had selected that specific location in that specific star system for a specific purpose. The planet itself was ordinary, but something had been placed there, something that needed to be contained. The record did not say what. It did not say why. It simply said that a prison had been built, and Earth was its location. The prison required a guardian species, a species that would live on the planet, unaware of what lay beneath them, but whose presence would somehow keep the prison sealed. When the guardian species failed, the prison would weaken. Something would emerge. and civilizations would die. Velith Ka read the final lines of the confession 3 times to make sure she understood them. We have chosen this burden for others because we could not bear it ourselves. We are the first guardians, but we will not be the last. When we are gone, another species will rise on that world. They will take our place without knowing it. And the cycle will continue until one guardian species proves strong enough to endure forever, or until the prison breaks and everything ends. The record was dated 4.7 billion years ago. Earth had not yet finished forming from the dust and debris around its young sun. But someone had already chosen it. Someone had already placed something there. And someone had already begun the cycle of guardians. Velith Ka closed the file. Her hands were trembling. She understood now why the dead civilizations had left their warnings. They had investigated. They had learned too much. And they had died. She should stop here. She should delete her research and pretend she had never found any of this. But she was 400 years old, and she had spent her entire life studying the dead. She knew that ignorance was not safety. The dead civilizations had been ignorant too. They had buried their findings and tried to forget. It had not saved them. Something connected these extinctions to Earth. Something connected them to the prison. And until she understood what, no one in the galaxy was safe. She opened a new file and began planning her next investigation. The oldest detailed records came from a place called Keth Sanctuary, a library world where a species called the Kethrani had stored the combined knowledge of 12 civilizations before their own extinction. If answers existed anywhere, they woe. The journey to Keth Sanctuary took 3 weeks. Velith Ka traveled with a small research team, Turim, 2 archival specialists named Kessin and Marah, and a security officer called Drenth, who complained constantly about being assigned to protect scholars instead of doing real work. Keth Sanctuary was located in a region of space that had been dead for over 2 million years. No living species had claimed this territory. No ships passed through. The stars here felt older somehow, as if they had seen too much and grown tired of shining. The planet itself was a frozen wasteland. The Kethrani had built their library underground, in vast halls carved from the bedrock. When their civilization fell, they had sealed the entrance and activated automated defense systems that still functioned after all this time. Velith Ka had obtained the access codes from the compact archives. The codes were old, but they worked. The massive doors groaned open, releasing air that had not moved in 2 million years. The team descended into darkness. The Kethrani had been collectors. They had traveled the galaxy gathering knowledge from every source they could find. When other civilizations fell, the Kethrani preserved their records. When species forgot their own histories, the Kethrani remembered for them. Their library contained the combined wisdom of 12 civilizations spanning nearly 100 million years. And then they had died, just like all the others. The automated systems recognized the team as authorized visitors and activated lighting in the main halls. Velith Ka had seen many ancient archives in her career, but nothing like this. The halls stretched for kilometers in every direction. Crystalline storage units lined the walls, each one containing enough data to fill 1,000 ordinary databases. Where do we start? Turim asked. Velith Ka consulted the navigation system. The Kethrani organized their collection by age. The oldest records are in the deepest levels. That is where we need to go. They walked for hours, descending through level after level of preserved knowledge. The air grew colder as they went deeper. Drenth kept his weapon ready, though there was nothing alive down here. Nothing had been alive for a very long time. Finally, they reached the bottom level. The storage units here were different from the ones above. They were larger, more heavily shielded, and marked with warning symbols in a dozen ancient languages. Velethka found the access terminal and began searching for references to Earth. The results appeared immediately. The Githrani had not hidden this information. They had simply placed it in the deepest part of their archive, where only the most dedicated researchers would find it. The first file was a holographic recording. Velethka activated it, and a figure appeared in the air before them. A Githrani scholar, preserved forever in light and data. She spoke in a language that had been dead for 2 million years, but the translation system converted her words to modern speech. "If you are watching this," the scholar said, "then you have come seeking the truth about Earth. We cannot stop you. We can only warn you. What you learn here will change everything you believe about the galaxy. It will burden you with knowledge that cannot be unlearned. Turn back now if you wish to remain ignorant. Stay if you are prepared to carry this weight forever." The recording paused, waiting for a response. "Continue," Velethka said. The Githrani scholar nodded, as if she had expected this answer. "We did not discover the truth about Earth. We inherited it. The knowledge was passed to us by the Varth, who received it from the Silence Makers, who received it from a species whose name has been forgotten. This chain of inheritance stretches back 4.7 billion years, to a time before Earth existed as a solid world." The hologram shifted, showing a map of the ancient galaxy. In that era, beings existed who were not like us. They were not made of matter as we understand it. They did not live and die as we do. They simply were. We have no name for them because they never needed names. They were the first minds in this universe, born in the fires of the earliest stars. The map zoomed in on a region of space that Velethka recognized. Sol, Earth's star system. These beings discovered something. We do not know what. We do not know where it came from or how it arrived in our universe. We only know that it was dangerous beyond any measurement. The beings who found it were powerful enough to reshape galaxies. They were terrified of what they found. The hologram showed something that Velethka could not quite comprehend. A shape that hurt to look at. A presence that seemed to exist in the spaces between the image rather than in the image itself. They could not destroy it. They could not send it away. So they built a prison. The prison is not a structure made of matter. It is a fold in the fabric of reality itself. A place where the rules of physics curve inward and do not let anything escape. The thing was placed inside this fold, and the fold was anchored to a specific location in space. "Earth," Earth Wallace whispered. "Yes, Earth. The planet formed around the prison over billions of years. Life evolved on its surface. And eventually, a guardian species emerged. This was not an accident. The prison requires an anchor. A species whose consciousness, whose collective will to exist, reinforces the walls of the fold. Without an anchor, the prison weakens. And when the prison weakens, the thing inside reaches out." The hologram showed a timeline. Species names appeared and disappeared. Each one was marked with a date of emergence and a date of failure. 17 guardian species have risen on Earth over the past 4 billion years. Each one served its purpose for a time. Each one eventually failed. When a guardian species fails, the prison cracks. The thing inside sends out whispers. And civilizations die. Velethka looked at the timeline. The dates of guardian failures matched the dates of mass extinctions in the galactic record. Every great dying, every collapse of galactic civilization had occurred when Earth guardian species failed. The current guardians are called humans, the Githrani scholar continued. They emerged approximately 300,000 years ago. They achieved spaceflight 3 centuries ago. They are young by galactic standards, but they are different from every guardian species before them. Different how? Torim asked. The hologram responded to his question as if the Githrani scholar were still alive. Previous guardian species failed because they achieved contentment. They reached a state of peace and satisfaction. They stopped struggling. And when they stopped struggling, the anchor weakened. The prison requires minds that are constantly striving, constantly pushing against limits, constantly refusing to accept any final state. The hologram showed images of humans, their wars, their art, their endless expansion and exploration, their refusal to be satisfied with what they had. Humans never stop struggling. Even in peace, they are restless. Even in prosperity, they want more. They fight each other. They fight nature. They fight the limitations of their own bodies and minds. This makes them terrible at contentment. It also makes them perfect anchors. Balithka felt a strange mixture of horror and admiration. Humanity's greatest flaw was also its greatest strength. Their inability to be satisfied was keeping the universe alive. We recorded this message 2 million years ago, the Kethrani scholar said. We predicted that humans would emerge based on evolutionary patterns on Earth. We predicted that they would be ideal guardians. We hope we were right. If you are watching this, you know whether our prediction came true. The hologram flickered and began to fade. One final warning. The thing in the prison is aware. It knows it is being watched. It has waited billions of years, and it will wait billions more. But it is patient in a way that living minds cannot comprehend. It does not attack directly. It cannot reach through the walls of its prison. Instead, it whispers. It plants ideas. Civilizations that learn too much about the prison begin to hear those whispers. And civilizations that hear the whispers tear themselves apart. The hologram stabilized for one final moment. If you have learned this truth, you are now part of the pattern. Guard this knowledge carefully. Share it only with those who can bear it. And pray that the humans continue their endless struggling. Because if they stop, if they ever truly find peace, the anchor will break. And everything will end. The recording ended. The team stood in silence in the deepest level of the dead library. Valethka thought about the dead civilizations she had studied. The Veth Dominion with their civil wars. The Silence Makers with their sudden collapse. All of them had investigated Earth. All of them had learned some portion of this truth. And all of them had died. She understood now. The knowledge itself was dangerous. The act of learning attracted the attention of the thing in the prison. Its whispers had destroyed every civilization that came too close. But she also understood something else. The Kethrani had learned this truth 2 million years ago. They had survived long enough to build this library, to record this message, to preserve the knowledge for future generations. The whispers were dangerous, but they were not instant death. It was possible to know and still survive. The question was whether survival was worth the cost. What do we do now? Kessin asked, her voice trembling. Velethka looked at her team. They were all scared. They had come looking for answers and found something far worse than questions. We go back, she said. We analyze what we have learned. And then we decide whether to share it. Share it with whom? Doctor. The diplomatic station of Helix Prime floated at the intersection of 12 major trade routes. It was neutral territory, claimed by no species and governed by international law. Ambassadors from 300 worlds maintained offices here. Deals worth trillions of credits were negotiated in its halls every day. Velethka had requested a meeting with the human ambassador through official channels. She had expected to wait weeks for a response. Instead, she received confirmation within hours. Ambassador Adara Okonkwo would see her the following morning. This speed surprised Velethka. It also worried her. Either the humans were simply efficient, or they already knew why she wanted to talk. Neither possibility was comforting. She spent the night reviewing everything she could find about humanity's role in galactic affairs. She had always thought of humans as a minor species, agricultural traders, skilled diplomats, friendly but unimportant. Now, she saw the pattern she had missed before. 3 centuries ago, a plague had swept through the Torvith Empire. Human medical ships had arrived with a cure before any other species even knew the disease existed. The Torvith government had been grateful, but had never asked how the humans knew to come. 2 centuries ago, an asteroid had been heading toward the homeworld of the Polith. Human engineering teams had redirected it, claiming they happened to be in the area testing a new propulsion system. The Polith had accepted this explanation without question. 70 years ago, a war between the Kessin Collective and the Mara Federation had threatened to engulf an entire sector. Human diplomats had negotiated a peace treaty in 3 days. Both sides had agreed to terms they had previously rejected for decades. The list went on. Every major crisis of the past 3 centuries had been resolved with human involvement. Always quietly. Always without seeking credit. Always with perfect timing that suggested they had known what was coming before anyone else. Humans had positioned themselves at the center of galactic stability while appearing to have no power at all. They had made themselves necessary without anyone noticing. This was not the behavior of a minor agricultural species. This was the behavior of someone playing a very long game. The next morning, Velethka made her way to the human embassy. The building was modest compared to the grand structures maintained by older species. A simple facade. Minimal security. Everything designed to look unthreatening. She wondered how many people had been fooled by this appearance. Ambassador Okonkwo received her in a small conference room. The human woman was older than Velethka had expected, with gray hair and lines around her eyes that suggested a lifetime of difficult decisions. She wore simple clothing without any insignia or decoration. Senior Archivist Velethka, the ambassador said, offering a human gesture of greeting. I have read your work. Your analysis of the Veth Dominion collapse was particularly impressive. Thank you, Ambassador. But I do not think you agreed to see me because of my academic publications. Okonkwo smiled. It was a small smile, careful and controlled. No, I agreed to see you because of the questions you have been asking. Questions about Earth, about the warnings left by dead civilizations, about patterns that span millions of years. Velethka felt her heart rate increase. You know what I have found. I know what you have been looking for. I do not know exactly what you have found. Why don't you tell me? For a moment, Velethka considered being cautious, revealing only part of what she knew, testing the waters before committing. Then she remembered the Kethrani scholar's warning. Civilizations that hear the whispers tear themselves apart. If that was true, then caution was pointless. She was already exposed. The only question was whether she faced this alone or with allies. She told Okonkwo everything. The pattern in the dead civilizations. The journey to Keth Sanctuary. The recording that explained the prison, the guardians, and the thing that waited in the darkness beneath Earth. When she finished, Okonkwo was silent for a long time. Her expression had not changed throughout the story. She had not shown surprise at any revelation. How long have you known? Velethka asked. Humanity? Approximately 200 years. We found something on Mars during an archaeological expedition. A structure that was old when our son was young. It contained records similar to what you found on Keth Sanctuary. We've been preparing ever since. Preparing for what? For the day when others discovered the truth. For the day when we would have to decide whether to share what we know or bury it like all the civilizations before us. Velethka leaned forward. The dead civilizations tried to bury it. They failed. The knowledge still spread, and they still died. Yes, we know. That is why we chose a different strategy. Okonkwo stood and walked to the window. The stars of Helix Prime sky glittered beyond the glass. The previous guardians did not know they were guardians. They were shaped by proximity to the prison, made resilient and adaptable, but they never understood their purpose. When they learned the truth, it destroyed them. The knowledge was a burden they could not carry, because they had never been prepared to carry it. And humans are different. We have spent 2 centuries building the capacity to carry this burden. We have created institutions designed to manage impossible knowledge. We have trained generations of people to face truths that would break ordinary minds. And we have done something no guardian species has ever done before. Okonkwo turned back to face Velethka. We have made it our choice. The previous guardians served without knowing. We serve with full awareness. We understand what we guard and why we guard it. This changes everything. How? Because knowledge that destroys the unwilling empowers the prepared. We do not fear the truth because we have made the truth part of who we are. The whispers cannot break us because we have already accepted what they would reveal. Velethka thought about this. It made a strange kind of sense. The thing in the prison attacked through revelation. It destroyed minds by forcing them to confront realities they could not accept. But minds that had already accepted those realities were immune. Why have you not shared this with the galaxy? She asked. Because most species are not prepared. The knowledge would destroy them as it destroyed the civilizations before. We have been waiting for others to find the truth on their own. Those who discover it independently have proven they have the strength to bear it. Those who need to be told are not ready. And now that I have found it? Okonkwo smiled again, but this time there was warmth in it. Now you have a choice. You can take what you have learned and try to forget it. Return to your work. Pretend none of this happened. Some have made that choice. They live normal lives, burdened by secrets they never speak. Or you can join us. There is a coalition of beings from many species who have learned the truth. We work with humanity to maintain the anchor. We watch for signs of the prison weakening. We prepare for possibilities we hope will never come. We call ourselves those who stand with the wardens. Velethka considered the offer. 4 centuries of scholarship had prepared her to value knowledge above all else. She had devoted her life to understanding the dead so that the living might learn from their mistakes. Now she understood something she had never grasped before. Some knowledge was not meant to be collected and preserved. Some knowledge was meant to be lived. What would you have me do? She asked. For now? Watch, learn. Help us understand the patterns you have discovered. Your expertise in dead civilizations is invaluable. No one else in the galaxy knows as much about how species fail. That knowledge could help us ensure humanity does not fail the same way. And if I want to do more, then we will take you to Earth. We will show you what we have built. And we will give you a new purpose. Velethka stood and faced the ambassador directly. The Kithrani recording said that the thing in the prison notices when minds learn about it. It said civilizations that investigate are destroyed by whispers. Yes. Has humanity heard the whispers? Okonkwo's expression shifted. For the first time, Velethka saw something behind the diplomat's careful mask. Not fear exactly. Something closer to determination. We hear them every day. They have been speaking to us since we discovered the truth. They tell us to despair. They tell us our efforts are futile. They tell us the prison will break eventually and nothing we do matters. And you ignore them? No, we listen. We consider what they say. And then we tell them they are wrong. The whispers expect fear and surrender. They do not know what to do with defiance. Velethka made her decision. Show me Earth, she said. Show me what you are guarding. And show me how I can help. Okonkwo nodded, and Velithka saw something in the ambassador's eyes that she had never expected to see in a species so young. Hope, not naive hope, not blind optimism. The careful, hard-won hope of someone who had looked into the abyss and decided to build a bridge across it anyway. "Welcome to the Wardens," Okonkwo said. "Your education begins tomorrow. I hope you are ready." Velithka thought of the 400 years she had spent studying how civilizations die. She thought of all the questions she had asked and all the answers she had found. None of it had prepared her for this. But perhaps that was the point. Perhaps the only way to face impossible truths was to step forward without preparation and learn as you fell. "I am ready," she said. She hoped she was not lying. Earth was smaller than Velithka had imagined. A blue and white sphere hanging in the darkness, surrounded by a swarm of satellites and orbital stations. Traffic control directed thousands of ships every hour. Cargo vessels carried agricultural products to every corner of the galaxy. Passenger liners brought tourists hoping to see the birthplace of humanity's famous diplomats. None of them knew what they were orbiting. Velithka's ship descended through the atmosphere under escort. The journey took her over vast oceans and green continents, past cities that sparkled with light and farmland that stretched to every horizon. It all looked so ordinary, so peaceful, so utterly unaware of what lay beneath. The ship landed on a platform in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. There was nothing visible nearby except water in every direction. The platform appeared to be a weather monitoring station, staffed by a handful of bored technicians who barely looked up as Velithka disembarked. Ambassador Okonkwo was waiting for her, along with a human male in military uniform. He was tall and weathered, with eyes that had seen things no amount of time would erase. "Senior Archivist Velithka," Okonkwo said. "This is General Yusuf Amari. He commands the Warden Initiative." General Amari did not smile or offer pleasantries. He simply studied Velithka with the careful assessment of someone who had learned never to take anything at face value. "You have read the records," he said. "You have heard the stories. Now you will see the truth. Are you prepared for that? I have spent 400 years studying dead civilizations. I am prepared for anything." Amari's expression suggested he doubted this, but he did not argue. He turned and led them toward what appeared to be a maintenance elevator. The descent took nearly an hour. The elevator passed through layers of rock and metal, through ancient geological formations and human-built structures that grew more complex as they went deeper. Velithka saw reinforced chambers, automated defense systems, and monitoring equipment that made the compact's best technology look primitive. Finally, they reached the bottom. The chamber was enormous. A vast spherical space carved from the bedrock of the planet, lit by lights that hung from the ceiling like artificial stars. In the center of the chamber was something that Velithka could not immediately comprehend. It looked like a hole in reality. Not a physical structure, but an absence. A place where the normal rules of space seemed to bend inward and disappear. Looking at it made her eyes hurt and her mind rebel. "The prison," General Amari said, "or as close to it as we can perceive. What you are seeing is not the actual fold in spacetime. It is the shadow the fold casts in our dimension, like looking at the silhouette of something that exists in directions we cannot see." Velithka forced herself to keep looking. The shape seemed to shift and change, never quite settling into any configuration her brain could process. "How long have you been watching it?" "Since we discovered it 200 years ago. Before that, the previous guardian species watched without knowing what they were seeing. The site has been sacred ground in human cultures for thousands of years. Our ancestors built temples here, offered sacrifices, performed rituals. They knew something was important about this place, even if they could not explain why. General Amari led them along a walkway that circled the chamber. Monitoring stations lined the walls, staffed by humans and aliens alike. Velethka recognized members of several species she knew to be part of the Warden Coalition. "We measure everything we can," Amari continued. "Energy fluctuations, gravitational anomalies, quantum field variations. Most of the time, the readings are stable. The prison holds, but occasionally we see spikes. Moments when something inside pushes against the walls. Pushes? Tests. It is testing the boundaries of its cage, looking for weaknesses. It has been doing this for 4 billion years. It will continue for 4 billion more if necessary." They reached a station where a young human woman sat monitoring a bank of displays. The screens showed patterns that Velethka did not understand, waves and frequencies that seemed to mean something to the operators. "This is Dr. Sarah Chun," Amari said. "She leads our communications analysis team." Dr. Chun turned and offered a tired smile. "We call it communications analysis, but that is not quite accurate. The thing in the prison does not communicate in any normal sense. It does not use language or symbols. It projects pure meaning directly into minds that pay attention to it." "The whispers," Velethka said. "Yes, anyone who spends enough time thinking about the prison begins to hear them. The content varies depending on the listener. Some hear promises of power. Some hear revelations of cosmic truth. Some hear nothing but despair. It tailors its message to each individual, targeting whatever psychological weaknesses it can find." "And you listen deliberately?" Dr. Chun's smile faded. "Someone has to. The whispers are our only source of information about what is happening inside the prison. By analyzing their patterns, we can predict when the thing is preparing to test the walls more aggressively. We have developed countermeasures, psychological training that makes our people resistant. But resistance is not immunity. We rotate our staff frequently and monitor everyone for signs of influence." Velethka thought the dead civilizations she had studied, the sudden civil wars, the inexplicable conflicts, the moments when stable societies simply tore themselves apart. "The civilizations that died," she said. "They heard the whispers without knowing what they were hearing." "Exactly," General Amari said. "The thing cannot reach through the prison directly, but it can plant ideas in minds that are paying attention. A leader becomes paranoid. A scientist makes a fatal mistake. A movement forms around a philosophy that seems reasonable but leads inevitably to destruction. The thing has been doing this for billions of years. It has had time to perfect its techniques. How does humanity resist? By knowing what we face. The whispers are dangerous when they are mistaken for genuine thoughts. When a person believes the despair or the paranoia or the destructive impulses come from within themselves. Once you understand the source, you can recognize the intrusion. You can say, "This thought does not belong to me. This is not my despair. This is something trying to manipulate me." They continued walking around the chamber. Velethka noticed something strange about the people working here. They moved with purpose, but there was also a heaviness to them, a weight that came from carrying knowledge that could not be shared with anyone outside these walls. "The previous guardian species failed because they stopped struggling," she said. "The Gethrani records said humans are different because you never stop fighting. Is that true?" General Amari stopped walking. He turned to face the shadow in the center of the chamber. "Humans are a species at war with ourselves. We always have been. We fight over resources and territory. We fight over ideas and beliefs. We fight against nature and against the limitations of our own bodies. Even when there is nothing external to fight, we find internal battles, self-improvement, personal growth. The constant drive to become something more than what we are." He turned back to Velethka. "Other species see this as a flaw. They think we are unstable or immature. They believe that a truly advanced civilization would find peace and contentment. But contentment is death for a guardian species. The prison requires an anchor that is constantly in motion. A species that pushes and strives and never accepts any final state. And you have accepted this role? We have embraced it. 200 years ago, when we discovered the truth, we had a choice. We could try to change our nature, become peaceful and content like the guardians before us. Or we could accept who we are and turn our supposed weakness into strength. You chose to keep fighting. We chose to fight with purpose. Before, our struggles were directionless. Wars fought for pride or greed. Conflicts that served no larger goal. Now everything we do serves the same end. Every human alive contributes to the anchor, whether they know it or not. Their dreams and fears, their hopes and disappointments, their endless reaching for something just beyond their grasp. All of it strengthens the prison walls. Velethka looked at the shadow in the center of the chamber. She thought she saw something move within it. A flicker of awareness. A sense of something vast and patient observing her in return. It knows we are here, she said. It always knows. It has been aware of every mind that has ever focused on it. It knows you personally now. It will learn your weaknesses and begin crafting whispers designed specifically for you. Should I be afraid? General Amari considered the question. Fear is a reasonable response. But fear alone will not protect you. What will protect you is knowing that the fear is coming from outside. It is not yours. You do not have to own it. He placed a hand on her shoulder. It was a surprisingly gentle gesture from such a hard man. You have joined the wardens because you want to help. The best way to help is to remember that the thing in the prison is not invincible. It has been contained for 4 billion years. It has failed to escape through 17 guardian species. It will fail again. Not because we are stronger than it, but because we refuse to give up. We refuse to stop struggling. We refuse to let it win. Velethka took one final look at the shadow. Somewhere in that impossible darkness, something ancient and terrible waited. 6 months after Velethka descended into the chamber beneath Earth's ocean, the galaxy learned the truth. It began with a compact archivist named Toril, who found fragments of Velethka's original research. She had been careful, but not careful enough. Toril was young and ambitious, and he saw an opportunity to make a name for himself by exposing what he called the greatest cover-up in galactic history. He brought his findings to a faction within the Compact that called themselves the Illumination Movement. They believed knowledge should never be hidden. They believed secrets were the tools of tyrants. And they believed humans were hoarding something that belonged to all species. The leader of the Illumination Movement was a Torvith admiral named Keseth. He was old and proud, and convinced that his species had been denied their rightful place in galactic affairs because humans had secretly manipulated events for centuries. When Toril showed him the evidence of a massive human conspiracy involving ancient warnings and buried secrets, Keseth saw his chance to expose humanity's lies and restore Torvith dominance. He assembled a coalition fleet. 12 species contributed ships. 300 vessels gathered at the edge of Earth's star system and delivered an ultimatum. Reveal the truth or face forced disclosure. Velethka watched the confrontation unfold from the monitoring station beneath the ocean. General Amari stood beside her, his face grim as communication feeds showed the fleet positioning itself for attack. They do not understand what they are asking for, Velethka said. No, they understand only that we have kept secrets. They believe those secrets must be valuable. They do not realize the secret's a burden, not a treasure. Can we stop them? Amari shook his head. We have military capabilities they do not suspect. We have been preparing for 2 centuries. If we fought, we would win. But winning would expose even more secrets. The galaxy would learn that humanity has been deceiving them about our true strength. That revelation would be almost as damaging as the truth about the prison. Ambassador Okonkwo arrived, her usual calm replaced by visible tension. The coalition species are demanding answers. Our allies in the Warden Initiative want to know how we will respond. Everyone is waiting for us to make a move. Then we make one, Amari said. Not the one they expect. He turned to face Okonkwo directly. We cannot prevent disclosure. We can only control it. I recommend we tell them everything. Okonkwo was silent for a long moment. If we reveal the truth about the prison, every mind that learns of it becomes a target for the Whispers. We could trigger exactly the kind of galactic collapse we have spent 2 centuries preventing. If we do not reveal it, Admiral Kesseth will discover fragments on his own. Partial truths are more dangerous than complete ones. He will learn enough to be vulnerable, but not enough to understand how to protect himself. The Whispers will find him. And a Torvith admiral with a fleet at his command, driven mad by cosmic horror, is a threat we cannot allow. Velith understood the logic. It was the same logic that had guided her own journey. Prepared minds could bear the truth. Unprepared minds were destroyed by it. The only way to protect the galaxy was to ensure everyone who learned was also given the tools to survive. It is my decision, Okonkwo said finally. I will make the broadcast. The message went out across every communication channel in the galaxy. Ambassador Okonkwo stood before a camera in the monitoring station, the shadow of the prison visible behind her. She spoke for 1 hour, explaining everything. The ancient beings who built the prison, the thing that waited inside, the chain of guardian species stretching back 4 billion years. Humanity's role as the current anchors. She showed evidence. Recordings from Keth Sanctuary, sensor data from the monitoring station, translations of the warnings left by dead civilizations. Everything the Wardens had gathered over 2 centuries of preparation. And then she delivered the final warning. The thing in the prison feeds on attention. Every mind that contemplates it, every consciousness that focuses on it, strengthens its ability to project whispers. This is why the dead civilizations left their warnings incomplete. This is why they tried to forget what they learned. The knowledge itself is a weapon that the enemy uses against us. She leaned forward, her eyes intense. But knowledge can also be a shield. The whispers work by disguising themselves as genuine thoughts. Despair that seems to come from within. Paranoia that feels justified. Destructive impulses that appear reasonable. Once you understand the source, you can recognize the intrusion. You can resist. We are sharing this truth because you have demanded it. But with the truth comes responsibility. Every being who learns what I have told you today must also learn to guard their own mind. The thing in the prison will try to reach you. It will whisper to you in your weakest moments. It will tell you lies that feel like truth. The only defense is awareness. The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, trillions of beings struggled to process what they had heard. Admiral Kesseth's fleet did not attack. The Torvith Admiral had watched the broadcast with growing horror. He had expected to expose a conspiracy. Instead, he had learned that reality itself was a prison guarded by the species he had spent his career resenting. 3 days after the broadcast, Kesseth began hearing whispers. He reported them to his medical staff, who found nothing wrong with his mind. The whispers grew louder. They told him the broadcast was a trick. They told him humanity had manipulated him into spreading their lies. They told him the only way to save the galaxy was to destroy Earth and whatever they were hiding beneath it. He ordered his fleet to attack. His own officers refused. They had heard the warnings. They recognized the symptoms. When Kesseth drew his weapon and threatened to execute anyone who disobeyed, his second-in-command shot him. The fleet withdrew. The crisis ended. But not before the galaxy witnessed exactly what the ambassador had described. A powerful mind destroyed by whispers it could not recognize as external intrusions. In the weeks that followed, the Warden Compact was born. Not everyone believed the truth. Some dismissed it as human propaganda. Some retreated into denial. But enough species accepted the reality that a new galactic order emerged. The Compact was built around a single purpose, helping humanity maintain the anchor. Some species contributed by monitoring their own populations for signs of whisper influence. Others provided resources and technology to strengthen the monitoring station beneath Earth's ocean. A few volunteered their people for the most difficult task, listening to the whispers deliberately, analyzing their patterns, searching for any hint of how the thing in the prison might be defeated. Valithka became a founding ambassador of the Compact. Her expertise in dead civilizations proved invaluable. She studied the failures of the past and developed training programs to help new species avoid the same mistakes. She lectured at academies across the galaxy, teaching beings from 100 worlds how to recognize thoughts that did not belong to them. 1 year after the broadcast, she returned to the monitoring station for a ceremony marking the anniversary. General Amari stood beside her as they looked at the shadow in the center of the chamber. "The readings are more stable than they have ever been," Amari said. "The anchor is stronger, not just because of humanity, but because of everyone who has joined us. Every mind that knows the truth and chooses to resist adds to the wall." "The thing must hate that," Valithka said. "I think it does. The whispers have grown more aggressive, more desperate. For 4 billion years, it has relied on ignorance as its primary weapon. Now that weapon has been taken away. It has to find new strategies, and we have given it less time to plan than it has ever had before. Will it find a way?" Amari was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful rather than certain. "Perhaps. It is ancient beyond comprehension. It has survived everything the universe has thrown at it. We would be fools to think we have won permanently. Then what is the point? The point is that we are still here. Every day we survive is a victory. Every year we hold the line is another year the universe continues to exist. We may not be able to defeat the thing in the prison, but we can deny it victory for as long as we choose to keep fighting." Valithka looked at the shadow. She had learned to tolerate its presence over the past year. She had heard its whispers and rejected them so many times that they barely registered anymore. It was still terrifying. It would always be terrifying. But terror was not the same as despair. "The Githrani recording said humans were different because you never stopped struggling," she said. "Do you think that is still true now that you know why you are struggling?" "I think it is more true than ever. Before, we struggled without purpose. Now we struggle with the greatest purpose imaginable. Every human alive knows that their refusal to give up is what keeps reality intact. That knowledge does not make us content. It makes us determined. And the other species? The ones who have joined the Compact?" Amari smiled. It was an expression she had rarely seen on his face. "They are learning. Your people, the Soren, have discovered that your long lifespans make you excellent at sustained resistance. The Polith have found that their pattern recognition lets them identify whisper.